94 and the Thornton Quarry. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Clouds on the decrease, high 44. We still have mostly cloudy conditions and 36. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560 The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey.
Insert Democrat socialist here.
Runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out. I said when you're moving
Top of the morning,
out.
Dan and Amy. That theme music means it's time for our weekly confab with Wirepoints.org's President Ted Dabrowski, who we'll get to in just a moment. I did want to alert people's attention to this. The website is up.
What website?
The website.
Yeah.
The African Descent Citizens Reparations Committee website.
Oh.
The ADCRC website.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The ADCRC established to bring an equity focus on African American communities and residents that have been disproportionately impacted by longstanding disinvestment due to direct and systemic repercussions of slavery. What year is it again? ADCRC has been tasked with developing and recommending measures to ensure equity, equality, and parity for African American descendants of slavery. So I don't know if we can do as good as San Fran, where they're talking about $5 million per, but I'm sure our legislators can come up with something. Reparations. I wonder where the mayoral candidates are on this. Maybe somebody will ask them.
Yeah.
The chair of the commission, Marvin Slaughter, the commission will take a holistic approach to gain knowledge to inform our task of making recommendations that address disparities present in our community as a result of slavery and its vestiges. More kickback capitalism is coming. But unless you're of the African-American persuasion, that's not for you. Sorry. You get to pay for it, though. That's the good news. Right? In the interest of equity. We're on board for that as a state, aren't we? Don't you think? Why wouldn't we be? More good news. Ted Dabrowski joins us now. Ted, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
Yeah. Reparations Commission. It's about time. We've been behind L.A., San Francisco, even Evanston, has been leading the way. Finally, the state is acting. Long overdue.
Evanston took the lead, and I was just reading about their program. They've struggled. They've hardly handed out any money. It's daunting, the whole discussion. It's just daunting. But I think it all points back to the problems that we've been talking about for Chicago and largely across the country. That this equity movement, this white supremacy movement, it's gotten so big that it's dominating places like Chicago. And I argue, and so will many others, that it's the fundamental problem with a place like Chicago. Of course, there's always all kinds of problems, but once you obsess about that issue, you drop things like merit, you drop things like even job creation. I've been arguing that you can't fix these wealth gaps and all those gaps that have been created over time with more handouts. You can't do it with food stamps. You can't do it with Medicaid. You can't do it with reparations. The real way to solve these problems is to have more people participating in jobs, and succeeding with meeting and all that. And instead, we're not teaching our kids to read. We're doing all these things backwards, and it's just it's coming back to bite us really big.
But to be fair, because this is not really about reparations in isolation. This is about exactly the phrase I use, which I borrowed from Andy Kessler's column in the Journal. This is kickback capitalism, and the honkies did it first. The government throwing tax money at favored constituents, whether it's sweetheart inside deals for contractors or for largely white trade unions, for a particular real estate developer, all the inside deals, all the carve-outs. I mean, hell, we're just seeing... this is a perfect commentary in Chicago. The two senior most members of the city council, Ed Burke and Carrie Austin, white Ed Burke, black Carrie Austin, they're both leaving office under indictment. I mean, is there a more perfect commentary than that? So it's cultural, because they want to make it about race and they want to play this white versus black versus whatever game, and it's not. It's about the kleptocratic political culture that says, let's get political power so we can do our carve-outs and our special deals and our waivers and favors. And so honkies do it and blacks do it. The politicians in both camps do it. And so the city continues to suffer under the weight of all of the above, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, that's true too, right? You look at government programs, you look at the carve-outs, you look at the sweet deals that we gave. We give Sears, like a company like Sears, bankrupt Sears, right? We give them big deals. You look at all the bailouts we've done. So there's a lot of arguments that can be used, like you say, for this, because everybody's getting their deal, and more so every day. So that's true. But when you think about something like reparations, it's daunting. It's impossible to figure out how it would work, and nobody seems to be able to point it, even if it would work at all. So
matter of the new state school superintendent, you wrote about this recently, you and your colleague John Klingner. This fresh off his success, Tony Saunders at U46, which is the second worst school district in the state, arguably behind of significant population behind CPS. He's the new state school superintendent, and you and your colleague argue that it's going to be more difficult to attract teachers into Illinois' classrooms because of Tony Sanders. Well, I thought it was because we're not spending enough on K through 12 education. Teachers don't make enough in Illinois.
Yeah, this is kind of going back to the whole equity argument. Anyway, look, there's this whole argument that we need more teachers in Illinois, and the reasons why is we don't pay them enough, right? And all that kind of stuff. But when you look at it, you've got all kinds of reasons. We got this new Tier 2 pension. Well, I shouldn't say new. It started in 2010, 2011. It's a horrible pension plan for teachers, and it needs to be changed. That's one. You've got more violence in the classrooms, and you guys have talked about that on your shows several times. It's getting dangerous for teachers. You've got this politicized classroom where if you're anywhere near conservative, you're going to have a hard time functioning in a school. We've seen that. But add to that, who wants to really work in a failing system? And you look at the numbers. And, we've talked about them all the time. You got a system where 1 in 10 black kids can read, and that's across the board in most schools. You got a system where you're forced to pass the kids along. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're failing. You've got to pass them. Just be quiet. Don't say anything. They graduate them knowing that the kids can't read or do math. It's a failed system, and everybody knows it, and everybody's faking it. Everybody just takes the money and moves on. And so what's fascinating is that Pritzker wants to do a new teacher pipeline plan, spent $70 million more dollars, never mind that we already have massive property taxes. And where does he go to push that program? He goes to Elgin with the new superintendent, Tony Sanders. Well, Tony Sanders' record over the last decade, he's been superintendent there, is worse than the state averages, far worse. And, that whole 1 in 10 for blacks, 1 in 10 for Hispanics in reading, that's exactly under his management. That whole promoting kids year after year after year, it doesn't matter what grade you look at for Hispanic students in Elgin, it's 1 out of 10, no matter what grade, whether it's 3rd grade or 11th grade. And he graduates all of them. So he's been running a fake system, and now he's going to be the guy to do that at the state level. Who wants to work for that unless you just want to get paid and not really care about what happens?
And don't forget, he's the same monster who locked a 5-year-old in a closet, remember, because he took his mask off? He was one of the original COVIDians.
Yeah, so, add to that, of course, that we pay the 8th most for education in the country, so, on a per-student basis. So why the heck do we need to put more money into that, right? It's really the whole system needs to be held accountable, but, in the day of equity and all that, it's not going to happen right now. But I tell you, as you've talked about these school board races and all that. This is a moment. It probably won't be the moment. I still argue we're still 4 years away from that, but at some point, all this stuff matters.
4 years away from what?
A better chance at an uprising. Same thing.
Why?
I say for Chicago.
Why do you think that?
I think Lightfoot getting kicked out is a good signal, but Brandon Johnson getting put as a potential candidate means we're not there yet, right? If it had been Willie Wilson and Vallis, at least we would have had two potential guys who were trying to reform things. But I think the pendulum's swinging. The pendulum's starting to slow down on how extreme it's getting, but it's not slow. It's not stopped yet. It hasn't started to come back. And so while people may want to celebrate Lightfoot being kicked out, we're not there yet. We need more pain and more, and sadly, and I don't mean I want more pain, but people aren't going to react until they kind of figure this out. Right now, this Tony Sanders guy, hey, he sounds pretty good, but people don't know the truth about
you look at you look at the headlines about big cities around the country. Just like you can look at any day. So Chicago, what the conversation is, Chicago, it's a break or bust. If you elect Brandon Johnson, Chicago's Detroit. That's what people are saying. There's existential is the feeling, at least among some, and unfortunately it's only some, to your point, in Chicago. Other headlines around the country. Walmart is done with Portland. Walmart's pulling their last two stores out of Portland because why? Because there's no law. There's no law enforcement there. Piece in the Spectator. Can anyone save Philadelphia? An update from Atlanta where there was more violence the other day in protestation of police headquarters down there. 23, and this is my favorite.
This is the best.
Including a Southern Poverty Law Center lawyer charged with violence in Atlanta. The Southern Poverty Law Center that the FBI's field office in Richmond relies on to designate Catholics who attend the Latin Mass as tied to right-wing extremism. It's really...
two of those 23, one was from France, one was from Canada, no one's from Atlanta.
I don't care. It's what's happening in these big cities. And some of it's indigenous and some of it's not. Some of it's roving bands of nomadic Marxist, doesn't really matter. The result in those cities is the same. The response from the leadership is the same. And where's the example of a revolt that's occurring? Was there a revolt in New York with Eric Adams? No, not really. It was sort of like the least offensive of the options. Has there been a policy shift in New York? Has there been an attitudinal shift? There's not really any evidence to support that contention at this point. So where in big city America those big cities that have been disintegrating at least since the Summer of Love and for many years prior for most of these cities, it just wasn't so public and obvious because it wasn't so public safety oriented. But the last 3 years, where is the clawback by the civilized? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, and I tell you what's interesting. I haven't seen a whole lot of attention paid to it, but the alderman, the socialist alderman, held the ground. The progressive caucus held its ground in Chicago, maybe even increased its size, and so it's not like they're all being kicked out. Now, yeah, maybe the conservatives did a little bit better too, but and maybe there should be more tension, which is good. But certainly, the people who've been huge supporters of defunding and more progressive causes in Chicago. They held their ground, at least on the city council. So that's not, we're not seeing the sweep. If anything, I think Lightfoot just got kicked out because, nobody liked her. She probably would have gotten away with the crime and education, all that, because they just don't like her.
Yeah.
Well, her personality.
And so we shouldn't celebrate too much.
Well, right. But if it was just personality driven, what does that tell you about the underlying views? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then you got, then there's a whole other discussion. And we have to really think about this because a guy like Vallis is running strong on crime, but to Jeannie's reveille just a few minutes ago, people forget that we could roll back crime to 500 murders like we were in 2019 and get some kind of normalcy, right? And under Trump, unemployment rates in Chicago were pretty low, right, for blacks, for everybody. But to go back to 2019, we were already a bankrupt city then. So just getting some control of the crime, which we must do. I'm not saying we shouldn't. We must. The fix for Chicago is so damn deep that there's so much more to do on on the whole pensions and corporations leaving and people leaving and all that we have to remember that it's massive reforms that Chicago needs, not just some status quo tweaks or some marginal improvements.
He is Ted Dabrowski, president of wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Ted, thanks as always.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Are you growing your manufacturing team this year and need new employees?